Shawn Michaels vs Razor Ramon at WrestleMania 10 has become known as one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history. Not only this, the match has also been credited as a trendsetter, being the first ladder match that the WWF put on pay-per-view, and thus inspiring a ton of young, soon-to-be wrestlers. Michaels vs Ramon, I feel, is compulsory viewing for anyone who calls themselves a fan of wrestling, but I will also admit that fans of modern wrestling may look back at this match and wonder what all the fuss was about. You have to put yourself back in that time period. Ladder matches had indeed happened before, even in a WWF ring, but to go out and put on a ladder match at WrestleMania in Madison Square Garden in 1994, it was kinda risky. While guys like the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian would reinvent the ladder match in the years that followed, and even today guys like Nick and Matt Jackson continue to innovate what can be done with ladders in a wrestling ring, Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels had the task of making the match work for the very first time on a large pay-per-view show. They didn't disappoint. This is still one of my favourite matches of all time, so today I'm going to talk about the WrestleMania 10 ladder match and try to unearth more details about the trailblazing match between the bad guy and the Heartbreak Kid. So, Bret Hart has been credited as the man who brought the ladder match idea to the WWF from his old Stampede days. The exact origins of the match have been disputed though, with Dan Crawford, the booker of Stampede Wrestling, and Kendo Nagasaki both being names that get brought up when talking about the originators. Nevertheless, Bret Hart suggested the match to Vince McMahon in the early 90s, years before the match type would gain a huge amount of popularity, and the first ever ladder match was held between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in Portland, Maine on July 21st, 1992 within the WWF. The match was contested for the Intercontinental title. The match itself didn't air on TV, but it was recorded and featured on VHS tapes like Smack 'em Whack 'em and the WWF's Most Unusual Matches Ever releases. The match would get re-released on the first volume of WWE's Ladder Match DVD collection, so it is quite easy to track down. Shawn Michaels didn't win the Intercontinental title from Bret Hart in the very first ladder match, but he did manage to capture the title when he defeated Davey Boy Smith on Saturday night's main event, airing on November 14th, 1992. Shortly afterwards, HBK entered into a feud with Marty Jannetty, losing the title on the May 17th episode of Raw, but regaining the title back on June 6th with the help of Big Daddy Cool Diesel, Shawn Michaels' new bodyguard. Shawn, during this time in his career, was an exceptional IC champion. He was an excellent in-ring performer who was putting on solid matches on a consistent level. However, Shawn would get suspended due to wellness violations and he was forced to give up the title. Shawn's giving up of the title was explained on TV as a forfeit. The champion had to defend the belt within a 30-day time period, something that Michaels didn't do. Imagine if this stipulation was still used in today's WWE. HBK came back at the 1993 Survivor Series, substituting for Jerry Lawler, who was dealing with some legal issues at the time. After losing a traditional Survivor Series match against the Hart family, where Shawn teamed up with Jerry Lawler's Knights, who by the way were Barry Horowitz, USWA wrestler Jeff Gaylord and Greg Valentine, Shawn would then enter into a feud with Razor Ramon. When HBK forfeited the IC Championship, the title was put up for grabs over the course of 2 episodes of Raw. Firstly, on the October 4th, 1993 episode, a Battle Royal would be held, but the match would end when it came down to the final 2 participants. These final 2 wrestlers would then square off against each other on the following episode to decide who should be the new Intercontinental Champion. Razor Ramon and Rick Martel were the final 2, and Razor pinned Martel to win the IC Championship. Razor was getting hot during this time in his career, having turned babyface just 4 months prior, but getting some insanely huge pops from the audience. Razor would also become a record-setting IC champion in his own right, but we will talk about the full Razor Ramon WWF run in a future video. All you need to know for now is Razor was the new IC champion and the fans were very much behind him. When Shawn Michaels came back after his suspension, he had brought his own IC championship with him, claiming he had never officially lost the title, and therefore, Shawn would say that Razor Ramon was in no position to call himself the Intercontinental Champion. It was decided then that both men would square off in a ladder match at WrestleMania 10 with both Razor's and Shawn's IC belts suspended high above the ring. The winner would be the man who could climb up the ladder and retrieve both belts, becoming the undisputed Intercontinental Champion in the process. From a storyline standpoint, the ladder match worked out really well here. Having the superstars try to grab both belts to claim they were the true champion just made a lot of sense. So WrestleMania 10 then, held on March 20th, 1994, Shawn Michaels vs Razor Ramon was placed in the semi-main spot. I know there were two WWF Championship matches on this night, but Razor vs Shawn was the second to last match and therefore it was in the semi-main spot. Shawn comes to the ring with his bodyguard Diesel. He refuses to walk under the ladder which was propped up in the entranceway, while Razor Ramon shows he isn't superstitious by walking right under it. Speaking of the ladder, did you know that this was the only ladder that was available for this match? Nowadays, ladders are found under the ring and around the guardrails during ladder matches, but it's been reported that this WrestleMania 10 ladder match here had only one ladder available. Should the ladder break? Well, who knows what would have happened. It nearly did break too, by the way. Now, I'm sure somewhere within Madison Square Garden there would have been a ladder available somewhere. It's hard to imagine the WWF not having ladders in their trucks due to setting up the lights and whatnot, but still an interesting little piece of information. I also like the idea of having just one ladder and not a ton available. It makes the one ladder feel more important, and if the ladder is tossed out of the ring or left at the entranceway, well, the wrestlers have to go and get it instead of just finding another close by. It just adds another small layer to a match that could be utilised in creative ways today. But anyway, on to the match. It takes a little while for the ladder to come into play, but this too makes sense. The match starts off as your typical wrestling match with both Razor and Shawn going straight at it at a fast pace. Razor is thrown out of the ring, allowing Diesel to clothesline Razor, which results in Diesel getting thrown out of the arena. This, I feel, is the one and only issue I have with the match. It's an ODQ match. Diesel didn't have to leave, but still, he done so anyway. But it's just a small thing, and it is best that both men have an even playing field here. Diesel was only there for such a short period of time though that he shouldn't have even bothered coming to the ring with Michaels to begin with. Anyway, the mats are pulled up from outside and Razor is the first guy to bump on the exposed floor when he misses a Razor's Edge attempt. This allows Michaels time to retrieve the ladder, and it's at this point where fans wondered what on earth would happen next. Remember, this kind of thing was never seen on this scale, so it was exciting to see how the ladder would come into play. Razor takes out Michaels, he throws him into the ring, and when Razor tries to get the ladder inside the squared circle, HBK pulls off a baseball slide, knocking the ladder into Razor as the crowd cheers in approval. The ladder is then brought in and used as a weapon, eventually leading to Shawn crashing the whole ladder across Razor's back in a spot that indeed looked very painful. Shawn then tosses the ladder to Razor's back as Razor is propped against the ropes, and again, I have to reinforce the fact that this was the first time that WWF audiences saw this kind of thing on pay-per-view. Shawn then tries to retrieve the title belts, but Razor pulls his tights, exposing Shawn's behind, and Shawn pulls off an elbow drop with his rear end exposed in the middle of Madison Square Garden. Next up is the classic moment that would get replayed for years to follow. Still to this day, this spot gets replayed actually. Shawn props the ladder up against the corner and performs a splash from the top of the ladder. Well, almost the top of the ladder. Shawn then tries to get the belts again, but Razor pushes the ladder, eventually leading to both men being out cold in the middle of the ring. A well-deserved break here. Remember, there hasn't been a single rest hold up to this point, and there wouldn't be any for the entire match, something that goes unmentioned when discussing this classic showdown. Shawn gets to his feet and attempts to Irish whip Razor into the ladder, which is set up in a corner. However, Razor reverses it, leading to another crazy bump from Michaels where he falls out of the ring. Razor then stalks Shawn on the outside with the ladder, laying in strikes and eventually catapulting Shawn into the apparatus. Razor gets time alone in the ring and the crowd starts getting even louder as Razor begins to climb. Shawn climbs up to the top rope and he manages to knock Razor off the ladder. The audience at this point are on the edge of their seats. This is the loudest they have been all night, and both Razor and Shawn must have known they had Madison Square Garden in the palm of their hands. Both men then begin climbing the ladder, sharing strikes at the top before Razor suplexes HBK from high above. The ladder then bent and twisted, and Vince McMahon went quiet for a few moments on commentary. Jerry Lawler said that the ladder had broke, and it indeed was a little less stable after this happened, but it still held up, thankfully. Razor tried to get the belts again, but HBK drop-kicked the already shaky ladder to make sure Razor didn't win the match. Shawn launches Razor into the ropes and hits an incredible superkick, followed by a pile driver in the middle of the ring. Shawn picks up the ladder, goes up to the top rope, and he falls on Razor while still holding the ladder in another memorable spot from this match. Shawn then tries to grab the belts, but Razor shoves the ladder, causing HBK to land on the ropes. Michaels tries to get out of this predicament, but his leg gets tied up between the top and middle ropes. Shawn struggles some more, but his arm then gets tied up in the ropes, allowing Razor time to climb up, grab the belts, and win the match. The crowd erupts, the match is over, and we just witnessed a bona fide WrestleMania classic in Madison Square Garden. The men get a standing ovation from the New York crowd after the match, and if you look closely, you'll even see commentator Jerry Lawler is on his feet, shaking his head in disbelief at what he just witnessed. Shawn and Razor went too long in the match. A 10-man tag was supposed to follow the ladder match, but the match had to get bumped to Monday Night Raw due to time constraints. This annoyed a lot of people, especially those who were participating in the 10-man tag. According to Rick Martel, Randy Savage went berserk at Michaels and Ramon backstage after the match, saying that their selfishness had cost men a chance to perform at WrestleMania. But at the same time, this selfishness also resulted in a trend-setting and groundbreaking matchup, so you can pick a side on this one. I've watched this match so many times and I actually wish it could have went on longer. It was that entertaining at the time, and still to this day, I find this match very engrossing from start to end. I just can't imagine this ladder match being any shorter. However, I also agree that taking opportunity away from 10 guys is a selfish thing to do. The ladder match at Mania 10 may have gone into overtime, but it's a case of the results speaking for themselves. Shawn and Razor stole the show here. It was really that good, winning Match of the Year from publications and magazines in the process. WrestleMania 10 was supposed to be Bret Hart's night, and in a way it was. Bret had an incredible opening match with Brother Owen, and also he won the WWF Championship in the main event, but Razor and Shawn turned it up a notch for their ladder match and gave people a match that is still talked about today, while also causing a ripple effect within the WWF. A famous quote regarding this match came from Ric Flair when he said that Shawn Michaels had a match with the ladder on this night, sort of saying that HBK's athleticism and selling with the ladder is what made the match special. While I totally get what Flair is saying here, I think it's also a disservice to Razor Ramon. It's always been said that a wrestler needs a good dance partner in the ring, and it's unfair to be selective when talking about this because of the circumstances of the match. Razor took some insane bumps during this showdown, and along with this, he had an incredible amount of fan support going into WrestleMania 10. I agree that Shawn put in a ton of work at WrestleMania, but Razor was the perfect opponent for Shawn on this night, and he was equally as fearless when it came to bumping around the ring. With all things considered, the story going into the match, the friendship and trust Shawn and Razor had with each other, the actual match itself and the finish, I don't think anyone could have done a better job than Scott Hall on this night. Shawn and Razor would meet again in a ladder match at SummerSlam 1995, something I talked about in my Shawn Michaels 1995 video, but this match didn't leave the same impression on fans as what the original did. Something I failed to mention in that video was that the original plan was for Shawn Michaels to face Psycho Sid at SummerSlam 1995, but plans were changed and the sequel to the WrestleMania 10 ladder match was booked instead. All things considered, I still think Michaels vs Razor at SummerSlam 95 was a good match, but their Mania 10 encounter was simply better. Shawn won the SummerSlam 1995 match, by the way. HBK and Goldust had the next ladder match in 1996 during the WWF Experience show held in Toronto. This one was for the WWF Championship and Shawn won again. And then the next ladder match of significance happened at SummerSlam 1998, pitting The Rock against Triple H in another excellent showdown. The ladder match soon evolved to include tables and ladders. The Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys went on to further evolve the match, and nowadays ladder matches have become much more of a regular occurrence. Bret Hart should be mentioned for introducing the idea to Vince McMahon without question, but Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon should be credited for making it work on a pay-per-view scale. So to close the video, here's a quote from Vince McMahon. This is what he said about the ladder match. The ladder match at Madison Square Garden, there was magic there. It was extraordinary, and it just showed what you can do from a dramatic standpoint with the timing that both of them have. Putting something together like that, all I can say is, it was amazing.